guys, it's the Captain here. Thanks for watching Andertons TV. And look who's popped by. It's Chris Buck.
Hello.
Oh, sorry, man. Chris and I have been kind of communicating by the wonders of social media for the last 6 months or so, going, next time you're passing by, you must pop in and do something. And the stars
aligned.
And here we are.
And the sun came out as well.
Unbelievably sunny day in Guildford. So
we don't get sun in Wales. This is novel.
Well, you do. Not as much.
It stops at the Severn Bridge, yeah.
Tell us a little about yourself, Chris, because I kind of know you from some of the stuff you've done on YouTube, but perhaps some of the people watching will be a bit less familiar with you. So tell us a bit about yourself.
The vast majority, I imagine. I'm Chris Buck. I play guitar in a band. It sounds like a start of a dating video, doesn't it? I play guitar in a band called Buck and Evans. Kind of like a rocky soul-y kind of thing. 4 of us, despite the name Buck and Evans, 2 disgruntled non-name members. But there is a reason why it kind of came later, so it was it's all good. But kind of rock and soul-y, kind of original stuff, and kind of playing all about the place. We're off to Spain in June, which if I'm struggling with the heat in Guildford in May, is probably not the greatest omen. But so keeping busy, kind of Facebook, all the kind of usual kind of suspects for kind of interacting with people and stuff, and keeping busy generally. So.
Yeah. So the stuff I've seen of yours, you've kind of been, I guess, highlighted as one of sort of the emerging kind of rock blues kind of talents out of the UK. How long have you been sort of full time guitar wise now?
It feels like forever. Started playing, I guess, around the kind of age that most kind of kids started playing. I guess would have been 13, 14 maybe, and just. It was the only thing I've ever kind of taken up in my life that I felt like there was a relative level of natural aptitude for. It kind of was the only thing that ever came vaguely naturally. And it's all I'm good at, really. So it's kind of it's one of those things that you've got to make it work, because other than that, it's kind of finding a day job. Which aside from my brief 2-month stint in McDonald's when I was about 17, that gave me a flavour of actual work and actual labour, which I've shied away from successfully ever since. To a certain extent at least, but. Kind of, I guess, sort of past 3-4 years is when it's all kind of really, the band and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, as you mentioned, the kind of social media stuff helps kind of keep things ticking over, and kind of people, I guess, exponentially kind of becoming more aware of who I am and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. So last kind of 3 or 4 years, I guess.
And so when you were, going through your teens and you wanted to be a guitar player, has the blues and the sort of blues rock always been your thing? Yeah,
I think probably kind of like most kids who kind of discover the guitar at a certain age, it was the usual suspects, really. It was kind of Clapton. Clapton was the first gig I saw, actually.
Oh, really?
Back in the NEC in, I want to say 2004 maybe. I was in a different postcode to Clapton on the stage. I was kind of sat in Stoke-on-Trent.
What was he doing in 2004? You're talking...
That was... I want to say around the kind of time he was doing sessions for Robert Johnson, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's when he'd kind of gone very old school blues then, hadn't he?
Which I loved. I think the first Clapton album that kind of really latched on to, like solo Clapton, would have been From the Cradle, which is obviously his kind of full on kind of back to basics kind of stuff. Yeah. And kind of worked my way back chronologically from there to sort of, the Blues Breakers, and kind of discovered the Cream through that. It's every kind of band I've discovered, I've kind of gone in reverse order. I've kind of started at the beginning and then worked your way back,
Well, you can't, I think if you're, certainly, if you're in your 20s now and sort of getting into the guitar, you haven't really got a lot of option other than to go backwards, because there's not a lot of that kind of new stuff sort of coming out.
It's frightening, isn't it? It's a shame to think you have got to look so far back in some respects to kind of find stuff that you kind of think is worth listening to. But my very vague Clapton story from that night is that he nearly ran me over on the way into the gig. I was dicking about, I think, on the kind of pavement walking into the gig with my parents, and stepped off the pavement to have my arse wrapped by a 911's wing mirror flying past. Which I didn't think too much of at the time, only to then watch the DVD that kind of was released subsequently after the tour, of him pulling into his home studio to kind of record in this 911 with the same number plate. So it's kind of like my claim to fame is that Clapton nearly ran me over.
So it could have all been over when it started,
before it even started. Yeah, literally before it even started. So
and who else then? Because I kind of, funnily enough, my Clapton, I wouldn't ever say that I've gone off Clapton. But that was probably, I think I liked all the Clapton stuff when it was a lot more up tempo than all that kind of stuff.
Kind of 80s Clapton, is it?
80s Clapton.
I guess that's more your era in that's kind of when you were growing up. Yeah.
So I loved 80s Clapton, and then I kind of loved all the slightly more up tempo kind of Cream stuff. And it was almost the sort of when it kind of, I don't remember what the album was, but there was that moment when he just went, do you know what? I'm just going to go and re-record a whole load of songs that I love from the,
He's kind of been doing that ever since, hasn't he, really? It's kind of standards and stuff.
Yeah, and it's all,
at a certain point.
It's all sort of gone a bit pedestrianised sort of
thing.
Yeah,
I think it's
all, it's what floats your boat, isn't it?
Inevitability.
Who else, though, was there? Because, I mean, I know Clapton's, he's like God, isn't he, as far as...
According to the graffiti, literally,
but, certainly on the British kind of
Yeah.
I think who else?
Slash was probably the first kind of guitar player that I really latched onto in a sense of actually kind of getting into the band and getting into Guns N' Roses to the extent where I had a cupboard full of bootlegs that I'd managed to get hold of and all this kind of stuff. I pretty much had every at some point in my life I've had a recording of every show that was recorded.
Yeah. I wouldn't have said that. I don't hear a lot of Slash in terms of your playing style. Do you think?
Kind of coming around to Strat kind of took me away from that. I think up until a certain point in my life, I was kind of mini Slash, kind of low slung Les Paul, kind of backcombed hair, hence this mess, the bird's nest that is now attached to the back of my head. Kind of very much in the image of the guy that was kind of inspiring me every day, and it was kind of finding the Strat and kind of finding, it's cliche, but finding my own voice a little bit more through the Strat and kind of finding a little bit more of who was me and less of Slash, which bizarre story, I've actually played with Slash on a couple of occasions, and long story short, we share a manager, or the kind of manager that saw Guns through their kind of, from about 86 to 91, I think. Funnily enough, I was talking to Alan, our manager, the other day, and the first show we ever did with G&R was Guns N' Roses either being supported by or supporting the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Right.
In a uni in LA somewhere, and he said, including myself, there were 12 people there. And he said, I didn't know whether that was my memory playing tricks on me, but he said someone forwarded photographs a while ago, and he said, you can see myself in the audience, and you can count the other 11 people, and think what that bill would fetch now.
Mad,
saw them through from that. So I think the last show we did them was Wembley, I think. And
I
then
had
they
no
kind of
idea
separated
that
ways.
you've done that kind of size of tour. That's crazy.
It's I got up with him in Birmingham. It would have been the first time at the NIA, in front of about 12,000 people, I think, which was a little bit daunting.
And how did the Buck and Evans stuff go down as a support act for? Because it's nothing as heavy.
Yeah, that wasn't actually.
Right.
This was just literally kind of getting up with Slash.
Right.
We went on to play with him later on. We did a festival, or actually a big benefit show out in Arizona, where we were kind of, I guess, in essence, the opening act, and then Slash came on. The kind of stand-up, lovely guy that he is, he'd flown across. I think he was promoting a film he'd been involved in at some point in Canada, and he'd flown across, literally him and his bodyguard. No guitars, no amps, no anything. And we were his backing band for the night, basically. Kind of rapped through a couple of Stones tracks, a couple of Guns tracks, obviously,
amazing.
some Hendrix stuff. So that, bizarrely, I have much more vivid memories of that, I think. Not only because it was more recently, but it was a little bit more relaxed. It was over the course of a set, as opposed to one condensed 6-minute, run at it screaming, do the blues jam, get off, kind of did that really happen kind of moment. That was cool, but he's a lovely guy. So I think it was kind of, Alan, my manager, wanted to wait until a point where he felt comfortable that I was comfortable enough in my own skin as a player, not to try and get up and out slash, and kind of be me a little bit more. So, I mean, you only find your voice through being a poor imitation of your heroes, really, don't you? So,
well, I certainly think, I don't know. I mean, somebody asked me that the other day. It's kind of who did I copy?
Yeah,
and I kind of went, I don't know that I ever went out of my way to copy anyone.
Yeah.
But I definitely, subconsciously, I certainly play in the style of people that I've obviously liked listening to.
Oh, it's subconscious, isn't it? It kind of, especially when you're learning when you're young, you're a sponge and everything kind of gets in to a certain extent, and it's how much it comes out in what you play then, I guess.
We'll have to get a little clip of you playing something a little bit heavier as well from those days. How did you? I always wanted to. I always wanted to be able to play the guitar as low down as Slash does, but because I don't know, I feel quite. When I've got a guitar on a Strat, I almost want to be, like. Playing it like
John
Alan
Lennon.
Holdsworth or something, right up, not technically like him, but I feel more comfortable
with it.
I really struggle. How do you?
It can't do much for your posture, can it? In the long run.
Is that the only way you're doing it? It's just leaning right over.
I'm going to be about 4'6", I think, by the time I reach 30. I don't know. I think ever since I've kind of been using the Strat, it's got progressively higher, and it's kind of Les Paul was as low slung as I could find the lowest Strat to go. But yeah, it's kind of getting progressively higher, but I don't think of myself as kind of playing the guitar as relatively low. And then you kind of see people commenting on videos of mine kind of going, how does he do it that low? And it's like, I don't think it is that low really, but apparently the look on your face tells me it is. But
well, I just find it, I don't know what it is, I just find it incredibly awkward.
It's further away, isn't it?
Unless you've got that kind of angle in your elbow to help get the hand round here. If you're trying to play with your arm relatively straight, it just feels. But I suppose he does look super badass.
Though, he looks cooler, doesn't it? The sort
and that's, I keep saying, that's still the most important part for any guitar. Just look cool. Play,
you can get away with a multitude of sins
as long as you look cool.
Yeah, definitely. I do neither, fortunately.
I don't know about that. So look, let's. So the because I've never seen you live. I've just seen. Well, I've seen you live on YouTube, not in the flesh. And Buck and Evans is that kind of. It's. I wouldn't have even said it was Clapton-y. It's got that kind of. It's got a rockier edge to it.
I think we're the culmination of all of our influences, and I guess kind of aesthetically, if you look at Buck and Evans, there's a million reasons why it shouldn't work. We don't look like your archetypically cool band. We kind of different backgrounds, different ages, all this kind of stuff. But it's kind of, I think the response that we have generally to it is one of total effusive kind of people love it or kind of really don't love it. I wouldn't go as far as to say hate it, but people either really get it and absolutely kind of fall in love with it, or kind of whatever. And I think people see that as its authenticity. It's kind of he's there not because he's the best looking guy for the job, but he's the right guy for the job musically. But kind of Bob, our drummer, comes from a very much kind of Cozy Powell and Ian Pace was kind of drumming idols growing up, so very much Purple Rainbow kind of much heavier kind of stuff generally. Sally Ann, the singer, comes from a kind of more of a gospel kind of Mahalia Jackson through a kind of Fleetwood Mac kind of thing, kind of stack harmonies kind of thing, which is something we've been increasingly trying to incorporate.
I can definitely hear that influence.
Yeah, the Fleetwood Mac thing is something we've kind of really set about, not trying to recreate as such, but kind of setting that as a little bit more of a kind of benchmark of way ahead. But yeah, again, it's the kind of, I guess we sound like, hesitate to say us because that's a very bold statement, but we sound kind of like the culmination of a unique ingredient of set of ingredients. So kind of rocky soul-y, again the kind of more kind of songwriting influences that I guess I bring to the table, and more kind of modern stuff, Ryan Adams, Paolo Nutini, all that kind of stuff. So it is totally the culmination of the parts.
When you're approaching playing guitar, are you predominantly staying within kind of like a minor pentatonic kind of shapes and just is that very much your grounding in guitar? Is that kind of vibe?
I guess initially everyone, it's that kind of it's the 5 notes and kind of I remember that kind of reaching to a point when I was a kid where it blew my mind that pretty much everything I'd loved up until that point was a variation on 5 notes. But I think I found myself playing increasingly more kind of major sort of stuff. Just because it makes me feel happier, I think, But kind of, I guess even that kind of boils down to major pentatonic kind of stuff, and it's kind of very hard to get away from the fact that a lot of what your heroes or yourself do boils down to about 5 or 6 notes.
Have you got like a favourite go-to lick that when you're sort of jamming you wanna?
Yeah, this kind of something that kind of people tend to pick up on. Sorry, I'm probably going to be wilding out of tune given the heat.
It is hot in here.
It is warm.
Yes.
But kind of something that people have picked up on that I tend to do a lot, which again you kind of start to notice when other people pick up on it and not so much yourself watching yourself back, but it's kind of like a slidey kind of all that kind of stuff, which
that's lovely, isn't it?
Oh, thank you very much. All that kind of really stem from trying to emulate kind of like a vocal thing, the kind of inflections and kind of what's the word?
Because that's not Clapton-y at all, is it?
No. That's more Derek Truxey without the slide, I guess, and kind of
that's
like
exactly.
Joey Landreth and all that kind of stuff. The phenomenal
shout
slide
out
players.
for the Joey.
Yeah, shout out for Joey, a monstrous player.
Yes.
He's coming back over, isn't he, soon?
Yeah, in the summer.
I shall be there. I was gigging pretty much every date that he played last time. I was out myself, so I shall definitely have to get to a show.
Definitely.
I want to get a copy of his album as well. It's not on bloody Spotify or iTunes or any of that kind of
What,
stuff.
Whiskey,
yet.
you
So,
mean?
yeah.
Might be able to help you out there.
Oh, awesome. See, I knew it was a reason I came. Yeah, that's very much more of a kind of slide-orientated kind of thing. Obviously, sans slide. If you heard me with a slide, it's like a cat dying, so it's not something, not even something I'm going to attempt. But trying to emulate the kind of, there's a posh Italian word, and there's a glissando, the kind of in and out of kind of pitch.
Sounds like an ice cream to me, but I think you're probably right. I think you're right.
But yeah, kind of trying to emulate that kind of.
But I agree. I mean, that kind of, you're replacing with a, just getting those.
Yeah. No, totally.
I spend. I don't consider myself, technically a great guitar player or anything like that, and certainly
don't do yourself a disservice.
No, but I'm a big believer in going. If you can make one note sound better, then
do the one
do
note.
that.
Yeah,
Don't kind of go. Oh, I must get 30 notes per second down. Just
again, it's a slight cliche to say, but BB King was the guy for that. Went to Cardiff to see him play, and it was great. It was a bizarre gig actually. It was kind of like an evening with BB King. It was kind of like an audience with him. It was kind of, I don't think the band stopped playing all night. They kind of gave him like a kind of groove, and he told stories, all of which seemed to culminate in "All Women Are Angels" was the message at the end of each song, pretty much. Which I would encourage him to take a walk down Caroline Street in Cardiff at the time
absolutely,
he was playing.
You're completely right. If ever you need some inspiration to just go, I don't need to play 1,000 miles an hour.
Totally, yeah. Why say it with 30 notes when you can say it with one?
Yeah, I love that. And again, actually, just how far you can get. What a fabulous voice!
Oh, incredible!
And the phrasing and everything was just ridiculous.
Live at the Regal was the first BB King album I got hold of, and it's just kind of the energy kind of oozing out of that. So I think that set the.
I tell you who we have got. I don't know if you're. It's probably too far for you to come, but I'm welcome to get you on the guest list if you want to come. We've got an evening with Eric Gailes next week.
Oh, he's unreal. There's certain guys that you see playing that it's inspiring to the extent where you think, if I practiced, I could do that. And then there's other guys like Eric where you think there's no point in even vaguely trying to emulate that, because as long as I've got a hole in.
Yeah, do you know what? I was watching a little YouTube clip of Eric Gailes the other day, and I always thought that when you see Eric and you hear about his backstory and obviously the difficult upbringing he's had and there's all his battles with alcohol and all that you did just think there's got to be some God-given kind of just talent in this guy. But you listen to him and he's just learnt and practiced, and he sees, he knows every note and every scale and everything that you can do, so that if his brain goes, oh, this is probably what's going to fit right, his fingers just do the job. And it's like,
the first thing I saw of Eric was playing Little Wing, I think, maybe just kind of like a YouTube clip of him in a kind of college, I think, in the US somewhere, and it was the chords in between the chords almost, the kind of the magical parts, and just like you said, his theoretical knowledge you don't get that balance of theoretical knowledge and feel. It kind of tends to be one or the other. They tend to be kind of mutually exclusive to one another, but he's nailing both to an extent I've never seen.
Pete and I decided the other day to just, because one of the things I think about Eric Gailes that makes some of his licks so elusive are because all the strings are upside down. So we got a left-handed guitar and just decided to play it.
Okay.
And obviously we had 5 minutes of messing around before we started recording, so it wasn't like we'd given it years of practice. But after like a minute or two of into it, you just realise there are some licks that you can play that are relatively simple, but that sound totally fresh. Because it's all upside down.
It brings different stuff out of you, I guess. And I'm kind of a big guy for using the thumb over kind of Hendrix sort of thing to kind of use the bottom of the chords. I guess you kind of lose that if you...
You have got a massive thumb.
I've had it elongated. It's a surgical... No, I haven't really.
I was about to say, honestly and truly, put your hand up a minute for a second. Now, I wouldn't have said that our hands are actually... But your thumb is like twice the size of mine.
Oh, there we go.
I think that gives you a huge advantage, because I can't... Well, not can't play. It feels... When you're thumbing the bottom E string, which part of your thumb is really on it?
Kind of, I guess on that
crevice.
on the crevice there, on that kind of knuckle. Is that a knuckle?
Quite I find that quite. Well, I don't know. Is it uncomfortable?
Yeah,
it's just alien, I think, rather than uncomfortable.
I can't remember. I remember starting to do that, and again, rather sacrilegiously, I kind of rediscovered probably the word Hendrix through John Mayer, and kind of obviously went through the trio kind of era with Try and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, very influenced by Hendrix, and kind of worked my way backwards. And the magic for Hendrix for me is the kind of rhythm stuff. The rhythm stuff and the kind of lyrics, but from a guitar perspective, it's the kind of his rhythm playing is so lyrical and so kind of fluent. It's kind of it's almost a kind of melody in itself, you know, underneath what he's singing.
Give us a bit of. I want to kind of go on and talk about gear and particularly the pedalboard because it looks awesome. But I love, you know, I did even when we were just jamming around, and I won't jam over the top of this. I'll just let you do your thing. Give us an example of kind of some of that where you're combining that sort of rhythmic sort of you know stuff where perhaps the bottom E is doing, you know, is playing a different part, if you like, to what perhaps the lead lines are doing.
It's like I said, it was something that I never kind of, I can remember the kind of moment of starting to try to do that, but I never remember it being a huge struggle. So maybe I've got an abnormally large thumb, I don't know. It's not hindered me at this point, but I don't know, the kind of... That's a particularly poor example, but it's that kind of...
I get it, and a bit, of course, and I must try and practice this, of course, because if you don't use the thumb over to hit that sort of root note of the chord, and you bar it, of course, you don't have the ability then with the rest of your fingers to really do anything else. So
that was the kind of angle I came at it from, is if you use your thumb, you've got the rest of your fingers then to kind of do what you want, really.
And it is, because I know when I was learning, there was something in the back of my mind that said, no, the tutor book says the thumb's supposed to be on
go around the back of the neck,
I don't think I ever really religiously learned to play like that, but I always, every time I saw my thumb going over the top, I think I was like, oh, that's
quick, go back.
Not supposed to be there. So kind of annoyed, really. I should have just gone, no. Just watch Jimmy. Do what Jimmy does.
Do whatever Jimmy does.
Never mind what the book says.
No, so it's a kind of probably an inherent disregard for the rules that led me doing that in the first place. I was never one to follow. You know, as soon as the book said to do something, I would, you know, naturally gravitate towards doing the exact opposite. So, a bit of a contrary.
What is this particular guitar as well? This looks like an 80s or a 90s Strat.
It's not. Do you know what? It actually gets a lot of questions because it's a bit of a weird one. It's a Highway 1. Strat from 2004.
I can tell now because the body's that slightly more satin finish, isn't it?
To be honest,
is that a Highway 1 neck?
Yeah, at least I think so. They're great guitars and they don't get... It's a bizarre one. The reason I bought that, I designed some pickups a while ago. It's going to sound like a shameless product placement, but designed some pickups a while ago, which are actually released as like a signature set now with a company back in Wales called Radio Shop. And all of my existing Strats, I didn't want to be kind of cannibalising or taking anything out of and kind of, you know, not to kind of be sure what the end result was. And I don't know much about what's underneath all this, to be honest. I'm a little bit of a Luddite. So I'm scared of touching anything, because the moment you touch it is the moment it's not as good as it was before, obviously, which is total nonsense, but it's how I kind of rationalise things in my head. So I just wanted a relatively cheap Strat, just that I wasn't afraid to kind of take apart and kind of whip the bits and all this kind of stuff to develop the pickups. So I found this on eBay, and I didn't really know what it was. The guy selling it rather slyly was kind of like, US Strat, which, if you look at the headstock, it says made in USA, so I guess it is a US one. Again, there's not a massive amount of info about them, I think, because it was that kind of slightly, not pre-internet, but kind of primitive days of internet, where a lot of the bump that came out with this guitar probably would have been printed. So I can't find the massive amount about what they are.
Because at the moment you've got the special series Strat and then into the it's now Pro but was standard. And they are, the necks on those are completely, the headstock shape is different. There's really obvious to tell them apart. That just
kind of sits in that middle ground.
That just looks like the neck off the serial number is 2004. So I can't remember the height. I mean, to me, if you'd said to me, do you know, this is some sort of slightly cheaper body, but it's got an American Strat neck on it, I'd have gone, oh, okay, cool. Maybe it has. Who knows?
Who knows? It cost me 350 quid though. So it's a stellar. I've actually bought another Highway 1 since that.
That's ridiculous.
Just again, as much as I would love a custom shop or love something that's kind of, a gorgeous guitar, the total flip side of that is being terrified of it. Kind of not wanting to stick it in the cargo hold of a plane because you don't know what state it's going to come out in. This, I'm not overly worried about it. It cost me £300. So
I think therein lies the sort of the juxtaposition of the Strat design, isn't there? In that, really, Leo's approach, I think, was make something really affordable, really workhorse, decent, and then Custom Shop have kind of gone, or we can just do this like mentally expensive version of it. And I don't really know whether Leo would have approved of Custom Shop or not. But I certainly think that I guess ultimately it's if it makes a noise and feels good and does a job, then then good for you. Tell me, so I've not heard of Radio Shack before. Are they buddies of yours down in Wales? Or
they are, yeah. They're based, very close to me actually, and they got in touch with me probably about 3 years ago to see if I was interested in using some of their pickups, and they were very new at that point and kind of only really had a couple of models to try. So I tried a set of, I think they're the 63 specials, kind of as per pretty much every kind of pickup company in the land doing a variation or kind of as much of a copy as they can get away with of a 63 Strat, something like that. So I started using their pickups, and I think they noticed a bit of a kind of surge in people asking kind of what pickups is Chris using. They don't sound half bad. So they had the idea then.
I suspect what they really meant is Chris sounds really good. Is there any shortcut way for me to sound as good as him?
I don't know about that. It was probably my nan emailing him. No, kind of. I think they kind of noticed a little bit of a surge in interest. So they had the idea of kind of maybe doing. I don't think the idea was to do a signature set so much as kind of what would you change about them to kind of do them your specifications, and we'll look at that. And out of the kind of months of kind of R&D, a kind of signature set was born, which we released about 6 months ago, I guess. And I'd be kind of flat out lying if I said that the response to them hasn't taken us all totally by surprise. Kind of they've been selling incredibly well, kind of to every kind of far-flung
well, give us just
corner of the
play
earth.
A clean tone with no effects on it, and just let's have a little listen to what. Are they intentionally kind of voiced with that slight top end rolled off?
Yeah,
They've just got that.
Kind of the one thing they picked up on very early on is that I tend to use the 2 and 4 kind of positions a hell of a lot. So that was the kind of focus of making those particularly sweet.
Yeah.
I tend to set amps relatively dark anyway. I'm not a fan of kind of like in your face kind of brightness. But yeah, this is kind of the whole kind of aim of them basically was to kind of get that sweet sort of that 2 and 4 kind of thing nailed. Yeah. But to be honest, I've kind of found myself kind of going back to position. I never know whether it's 1 or 5. The neck basically.
Yeah, I know. I always thought it was 1, but apparently it is 5. Apparently 1 is here. But
there you go. So that would make that 2 and that 4 by that reckoning. Who knows?
Exactly. Who knows?
But yeah, the kind of neck sounds particularly.
Lovely full bass end. They sound quite low output as well. Are they?
To be honest, again, like I said, anything that goes on underneath the scratch plate, I'm a little bit of a Luddite when it comes to specs and all that kind of stuff. But the one thing I do know is that the kind of development that they kind of wanted to get in there is. They tell me this and it goes over my head. It's partial potting basically, which I know that you've got a kind of exactly. You've got a wax pot pickups in order to kind of stop them feeding back so you don't get microphonic feedback. The idea that they had is pretty much wax pot them to the extent where you're not going to get feedback, but they're not totally covered in wax like most pickups are. The idea being is that it increases the dynamic response. And again, the one thing that they kind of picked up on prior to designing them was I tend to flick between pick and fingers, which I guess there's a lot of inherent dynamic changes in that. So something to try and capture that. So, kind of everyone knows what the pick sounds like, but it's kind of, it's a kind of fuller kind of, it's skin on string at the end of the day, isn't it? It's going to sound different.
It's one of those stupid. It's like it's a fleshy sound. It's just like that means. What is a fleshy sound?
You run out of superlatives, and
it certainly takes that instant attack off, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it gives
definitely.
It that slightly smoother
Which,
sound.
when you're doing the kind of slidey stuff, kind of makes for a little bit more of a kind of warmer, wherever that is,
So. I think we need to now get a camera on the pedalboard of
doom.
Many guitar players' dreams, because there are some iconic pedals on here, from the Blues Breaker through to the Centaur, the Timmy. I mean, king of tone. And to be honest with you, it's pretty much, I mean, crikey, what you got about? That's got to be the most expensive part of your rig, isn't it?
I'm still trying to buy talent, is where it boils down to, and fit it on something that will go in front of me. Do you know what? I sat down and worked it out how much I spent on it a while ago, and it's one of those things that at no point in my life have I ever had as much money as that now costs.
I bet you that's 3,000 or 4,000 quid's worth.
I dread to think the power alone. There's 2 bloody power bricks underneath it, 2 Voodoo Labs things. That again, I can't ever recall a point in my life when I had as much money as this kind of tots up to. But it's one of those things, if you kind of do it in dribs and drabs, you don't really notice the money kind of seeping out your bank account.
And I've just realised as well, you've unless of course that's a misprint on there, that's not a real clon, is it?
No, it's not. Although I'm going to try and sell it as a real one if someone will
when
bite.
I first saw it, I just thought, oh wow, so maybe it's not 3,000 or 4,000 quid, because I'm just assuming that you've paid, but what is that? What's that then?
That is made by a company in Malaysia called Seriatone.
Who very much. I've heard of them. Do they do like kit?
They do amps,
kind
of either building yourself or kind of pre-built amps. Who've obviously kind of very much bought in the kind of clone kind of market. But genuinely, hand on heart, that sounds better than any of the kind of clones that I've tried in the past. Hence why, to be honest, it's an ergonomic thing as much as anything. It wouldn't be on my board being as ludicrously big as it is if it didn't sound like it does. So yeah, it's one of those kind of cliche.
Is there anything on there that was like, my first pedal? Like, I don't know, I'm kind of thinking it is the Blues Private,
Hand on Heart was my first pedal.
I love it.
And it's a shame, I kind of get it. Ever since I bought the gig rig looper here, you obviously don't have to stand on the pedals. Yeah. And part of the cool bit about that is all the kind of wear and tear across the front from where I've been standing on it after years, and that's no longer going to kind of accumulate now. So I'm kind of gutted about that. But Hand on Heart, that was my kind of first pedal, and then inevitably you start kind of either reading the gear page a little bit too much or watching your YouTube channel, which has drained me of innumerable funds over the years, and you start getting into the kind of more boutique kind of stuff, and you end up with some Analog Man stuff, you end up with some Emperor stuff, etc, etc.
So take us through, I mean, is there you've got everything on there from potentially like an always on just fat clean tone through to you've got the Scott McKeown fuzz, haven't you? So you got a bit of everything on there. So give us like, what are your kind of like two or three favourite stages of gain?
So basically the Centura is always on. It's one of those things, I was going through this with Pete a minute ago, and it's one of those things that it's a cliche to kind of say it works well as a clean boost, but it genuinely does.
Is this a nothing on at the moment?
This is, apart from the EP booster and the Centura, it's nothing on.
So you don't even have those two as part of your switcher because you never switch them off?
They never, they're never
on. So can we just switch that? Can I? Do you mind if I just literally switch that?
Yeah.
So this is Strat straight now into the Blackstar.
Probably going to be very quiet, actually, I imagine.
And I love the fact that you've basically got the gain on the Centura and the boost totally, on the totally as low as they'll go, and this is what we get. Massively more bass. Bit of compression.
It kind of pushes out that little bit harder, I guess, inevitably.
And I can certainly see why you would never want to switch those off. It's a good sound,
the kind of main effect they have is that I don't find myself very rarely playing with nothing on, kind of this either attack compression or a bit of overdrive. So that sound doesn't really get used very often. The effect they have though is making everything that comes after them sound that little bit better.
Yeah.
Overdrive pedals sound nicer with them on, etc, etc.
So what's your go-to kind of, just that's, I don't know, maybe there's a classic sort of Stevie Ray, just slightly sort of driven.
King of Tone kicked off the TS-808, which as a kind of tube screamer devotee who's kind of been through every kind of various kind of incarnation of tube screamers. At some point I never thought that would happen, but it's just that kind of...
Let's have a listen to that then.
Yeah, very cool. That kind of thing.
That's both sides of the Analog Man.
Both sides,
on all the time.
Do you know what? I've not really experimented with the kind of blend or turning one off and on. It plugged in and both came on, and that's where I went.
Is there some psychological reason why every single knob is pointing in the same direction on there?
OCD.
Is it literally? That's a different pedal.
Yeah. Do you know what? I haven't even noticed that.
Is it some sort of mecca of tone where every single knob is just pointing towards the same direction?
Pointing back towards Wales, it is.
That does sound great. So and if you wanted to step it up a bit, where do you go from there?
Generally speaking, I like to push a little bit more gain into the King of Tone, which is what the blues driver does. That's the kind of reason that's still there. That very rarely gets used as a kind of independent, standalone kind of thing. So if you push it with that, it takes it from a bit more something.
It's like scooped a bit of the mid-range.
I
noticed as well that there's no option to kick the Zen drive in on your switcher.
Do you know what there is? This is where I ran out of loops. At some point I will get a G2 and all hell will break loose and I will evolve into Michael Flatley. But the Zen drive is actually in the same loop as the heck. That's why that doesn't get turned on very often. That is, to be honest, that's there for kind of humbuckers and kind of when you want a little bit more gain. I very rarely use that with a Strat.
Fine.
It's that kind of robbing forward kind of, kind of thing. But
and then what's next? Do you use the fuzz much? Do you use or?
Do you know what? I'm not a massive fan of fuzz as a standalone effect. I guess the kind of it's very.
Like, oh
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's kind of like a kick to the face, and if you then kind of stack that with the King of Tone or any kind of vaguely kind of mid-pushed kind of overdrive, you get a very
So you're not going for that. You're not going for that sort of almost typical Hendrixy kind of fuzz vibe, are you?
In essence, I'm trying to turn it into another overdrive pedal, which you might have noticed I have a bit of a problem with. Kind of, especially with a Strat, I think it's kind of trying to level it out a little bit and kind of make it a little bit more palatable because they can get a bit.
See, I love. I kind of. Sometimes I go into Andertons and I look at the amount of pedals that are for sale. And I just think to myself, Anderton, what are you doing? It's like there can't possibly be a need for
that many
700 different overdrive pedals or however many there are. And then you go, really?
I'm the man buying them, clearly.
But it's not just that. It's like, I think we're all in this, overdrive is there's no such thing as just like, there's no such thing as an overdrive sound.
Yeah.
Is there? There's every colour of the rainbow of spectrums within that overdrive. And not only have you got individual pedals making certain sounds, you've got combinations of pedals that make certain sounds.
I got drawn into an argument on Facebook a while ago.
Sorry.
Pick's gone, is it?
Yeah, I've got it.
Fall into the alternate dimension they inevitably fall into. Got drawn into an argument with someone on Facebook a while ago about the kind of merits of kind of having 45 different shades of overdrive. And at the end of the day, the argument that you kind of get faced with is the audience doesn't notice. And save for the one or two total nerds like myself kind of out front, they won't in the grand scheme. But what the kind of argument, if there is one, is that if a kind of certain overdrive pedal makes you play very slightly differently to another overdrive pedal, or ultimately better, that's what the audience will notice. That's what kind of filters through them is, oh, you had a great show tonight. Yeah. And if that was because I was on fire or because the King of Tone is buying me that particular night, who needs to care what the reason was, So
that is the amen. And I think that took me probably 20 years of playing and working in Andertons and meeting other people and to actually realising that most people in the audience, you're completely right. Forget. They probably wouldn't know whether you swap between a 335 and Strat, or your guitar amp stopped working halfway through, or whatever. But it's what it is all about the level that the tone inspires you to hit.
It's facilitating what you want to sound like, isn't it? And if that's what they will notice ultimately, is if you have a good show. And
there's nothing worse, I don't think, as a guitar player, as just going, something isn't right, and I'm turning around and it's like, does it need a bit of this or does it need a bit of that? And that's the problem. And when everything is, when the tone is just there and you haven't got to worry about any of that stuff,
it puts you're more in the zone of playing, which again is the kind of, if there is a downside of having a pedal board like this, is that it's more things to worry about, which shout out to Dan Stein out at the gig rig was the kind of big kind of factor in me getting the looper pedal, is that even if it worked for an entire show, I would, before I had that, even if the pedalboard worked for the entire show without any issues, I'd spend my life, there was a kind of small part of me thinking, what if a lead goes?
Yeah.
How the hell will I find that? Either in the dark, or if you're on a festival stage for a download, how the hell will you find that?
Oh, I see. So what you're basically saying is your worst case scenario here is that one pedal won't work.
Yeah,
and everything else still will. Unless, of course, the gig rig thing doesn't work.
Yeah, don't say that now.
No, which it obviously Dan
yeah.
Steinhardt will put me in a full. Can't remember what he does. It's like some sort of ninjutsu, mega karate thing. But basically, if I ever inferred that any of Dan's stuff ever went wrong, I expect he would whoop my ass.
Having said that, now you can guarantee that.
No, it won't. I don't think. To be honest with you, I think that's why all the pros use his stuff.
Yeah,
because it's just it's
they're built like tanks. They're kind of indestructible, and you can take it out without any worry of anything happening to it. So
too true. Although, of course, it doesn't all have to be about having really, really expensive pedals, because I noticed you've got a Moore Trelicopter on there.
I have,
which would have cost you the princely sum of probably about 50 quid.
It did.
So your patch cables were about 10 times the price of that pedal.
Do you know what? I worked out a while ago how much I spent on patch cables. That's scary.
So Pete says the same on his board. The patch cables are, what did you reckon? 500?
Oh, really? Oh, man. George L's, Do you know what? I would have George L's on here if it wasn't for the fact that they need to be kind of mega thin line ones in order to fit everything. I'm going to say that I need, but that I want on the pedal board.
It's the 199 shitty patch cables. Yeah. Part of my tone, man. It's where it all comes. If I change those out, everything goes wrong.
Stevie Ray used to use like Radio Shack chip cables, didn't he? Because he was insistent that he liked the high end that you lost.
I totally made that up, but you've backed me up with the Stevie Ray
evidence. Here we go. If Stevie did
don't know.
Yeah.
I kind of. I love it when people go, you do this whole buffer, true bypass, mega expensive cables, everything like that, and it does take me back to going, in the 1950s where you had all these pioneering guitar makers and amp makers and all this kind of stuff. I swear blind, all they were doing was plugging the stuff in with shitty cables and making great noises.
That's the thing. Most of the classic albums that you love will have been made with gear that was probably on its arse at some point, you find, with a very few exceptions of kind of the nerdy kind of players, the pros who were kind of properly into those sort of stuff. I remember asking Slash about kind of some element of his rig, and it was kind of, ask my tech. They don't care as long as it kind of works and as long as it does the job that they want it to do. Who cares whether it's an expensive patch cable or whether it's something they found.
Unless you're Eric Johnson.
Yeah, and obviously he's the 1% of that.
Yes, apparently he can tell if a fuse is back to front in one of his amps.
Comes and changes his own batteries, doesn't it, before shows, and I've read
everything.
Do you know what? I watched a rig rundown or something with Eric Johnson a while ago where he said something about kind of preferring to run his amps at 8 ohms for lead. And it was some totally esoteric kind of bizarre thing.
We had a clinic with Eric, and I got to meet him, and he's a complete sweetheart. I got to meet his tech, who explained why the battery thing is. The battery thing is quite a bit more rational than you would think.
Definitely.
Drive pedals do change characteristically depending on the voltage you're in. But some of the stuff was like he had, like a four-way. Like that. He was insistent that we go and get UK to US converters, so that he could use his own four-ways rather than just using
the generic one,
like a four-way that we had.
Yeah.
And all of the mains leads are glued into the four-ways with little labels on them as to which amp they're supposed to be plugged into, because apparently if you don't use the right mains lead into the right socket, it's just like so. But do you know what though? Again, if he can hear it. And we go back to that comment we had earlier on. It doesn't matter if no one else can hear it.
Yeah.
It doesn't even matter if all it is psychosomatic for him. If he feels more comfortable playing, then he should absolutely, glue the leads into the
I noticed he's got one of his pedal on a kind of little wooden riser, isn't it, as well, or something like that to kind of make it further away from another pedal.
Well, but that again, stuff like that, we joke about.
Yeah.
But I bet you, if you took this pedal port apart and, I bet you could alter the tone of that pedal board by separating the pedals and doing different things with the pedal. I bet you could.
I had Hell's Delight with a wah pedal once that wouldn't like being anywhere kind of near the power supply underneath, which, given there's two of them kind of alongside one another, was kind of, there was a no-win because he couldn't get further away to avoid the hum. And definitely this kind of innumerable sort of.
What's just to finish then on the pedal board?
Yeah.
What's the solo that you do in the set where you're most looking forward to it because it's where you think you get the best sound out of your pedal board?
there's a track we do with Buck and Evans called Sinking, which by the time we introduce it through whatever PA system invariably sounds like stinking. So that's probably what people will know it as, which the end solo of that is pretty much kind of everything on, you know, kind of go for it.
Come on, give us a little 20-second rendition of that.
Of stinking.
Yeah.
So it's the King of Tone, stacked generally with the Blues Breaker, and a hair of delays. So yeah. Something like that, anyway. And that's one of those
that
kind of...
That did sound a bit Clapton-y from the sort of era that I kind of like.
It'll seep in every now and then. It's, like I said, I'm a culmination of my influences, I think, so...
And just, let's give a shout out to the Blackstar. I know they've been quite supportive to you in your career, haven't they?
They're great. Obviously, the Artist 30 as well, kind of... was the first amp, actually the first amp of theirs I used was the S150, which was obviously kind of very much more kind of EL34 kind of British voice kind of thing, but I think this is 6L6, a little bit more kind of twin-esque in its kind of voicing, I guess, that is, just gorgeous, really kind of, and durable as well. Mine's been with me all over the place, you know, either in the back of a van or in the back of a Ford Focus, and as yet, again, touch wood, the moment you mention anything is the moment it all goes wrong, doesn't it? But, you know, yet has kind of been indestructible, so... yeah. Do you know what? I'm looking forward, actually. We're playing a festival in Spain next month, and they've got an Artisan half stack, I think, waiting over there for me, which was obviously the kind of first, the first one of it, and I don't think I've ever actually played through one, so that'll be the first experience of that.
They're a bit more voxy, I think.
Yeah, that's what I've been told, yeah.
So this was definitely the more sort of Fendery kind of vibe, wasn't it?
Tap into that kind of groove,
So I bet you'll have some fun with the Artisan.
Yeah,
more, maybe
if it makes a noise, I'm happy, you know, and people can hear me. I'm not particularly. I say that I am particularly weird about it. Obviously, there's a board sat in front of me to attest to that, but I'm not gonna, you know, if it makes a noise and people can hear me, that's the end game. I
think it's been great. So look, we'll sign out with a little bit of a jam. We're going to grab a different guitar for Chris because I know again. Yamaha have been helping you out recently, haven't they, with a few bits and bobs. So you've definitely got a Revstar off of them, which we'll have a little noodle on. And so anywhere, if people want to find out more about you and Buck and Evans, where would they go?
All the usual sort of necessary evils, Facebook, Instagram, all that kind of stuff. Myself, Chris Buck. Got to be careful with that one. Or Buck and Evans, which I appreciate sounds like solicitors moonlighting as a band. But again, Buck, ampersand, Evans, you'll find us dotted all around the place, you know, generally making a nuisance of ourselves. So cool.
And festivals this year or anywhere? You mentioned, where were you saying? Spain, did you say?
Spain, yeah. For a man sweating in Guildford in May, it's going to be great fun, isn't it? I did a tour of Spain recently, 2-week thing in the back of a van, the saving grace of which was...
Really was stinking.
Oh, yeah. Horrendous. Yeah. Cheese was the sort of staple diet as well, so you can imagine, in the back of a van for a fortnight. Saving grace of which was a stage fan in the back of the van plugged into the saving grace, which was a plug socket in the van, because there was no aircon in the van, look, so we had this fan kind of keeping us cool for a fortnight around Spain. But we've got Stone Free Festival at the O2 with Rainbow. You'll find us on the bill if you squint hard enough on the poster. Although if you say it quick enough, everyone assumes you're supporting Rainbow. It's the great thing about doing these festivals. Yeah, we're playing with Slayer. O2 for Stone Free Festival. Then we are off to Spain for Ascana Festival in Vitoria. Then we're back and we've got a run of dates then in July around Birmingham, Manchester, and we're just finalising Glasgow, Newcastle, all up north. So get about a bit.
Let us know, if you're ever in this neck of the woods.
Fine neck of the woods, definitely.
I'll drag a couple of the guys out and we'll come and see you. But look,
awesome.
Thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate it. Good luck with everything as well.
Thank you very much, Lee.
Thanks for watching, guys. Enjoy this final jam, hopefully. Enjoy half of it anyway. And we shall see you soon on Andertons TV, the home of guitar shit. Bye! And other shit.
That's the slogan.
Marvellous.
Tidy.